the financial part as well. So when you're retired and if you didn't plan for that, you can get into difficult situations financially, which will have consequences.
Hello, welcome. My name is Stella. Today, Marina and I will be talking about the emotional and social impact of retirement. Hi, Marina. Welcome.
Hello, Stella. Thank you so much for having me again. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. Marina is a psychologist, clinical psychologist, entrepreneur, and career counselor. So she will help us understand the process that people go through during the retirement, but also before that period. As people, we don't like to think about that part of our life when we stop working, when we stop being part of an community and organization. But it is also very important to think about that, to consider that period, but also to know how you can incorporate that process in your retirement plan. In my previous recording in Portuguese and Dutch, I have discussed about the financial part of the retirement planning, but emotional planning, it's also very important. So Marina, we know you already. You have been here before. I will start with the first question. What are the emotional risks of retirement?
Hello, Stella. Hello, everyone. As I said, it's a pleasure to be here again. This is a topic very, very, important for us to discuss. And as you said, there is the financial part of retirement, but also the emotional, social, and behavioral part of retirement. And there is a lot of literature out there about that. And we see some risks, emotional risks involved with the retirement process and also a little bit before that. So mainly we can see, of course, the social aspect of it. So when someone retires, probably this person won't be part of a community or that specific community that the person was used to be part of. So this is one part. The second part is, of course, the social stimulation as well. So you were not networking as much as you were networking before. You have less interactions with people. You have less a routine in terms of waking up, going to work, and so on. So this is another factor. And of course, there is another emotional aspect, which is related to the social role that you play. So before you had this job or work role, independently of what type of role you had, but this you don't have anymore, or you need to switch to something a little bit different. So also your identity has a shift, and this is something we need to pay attention to.
So emotionally and in our behavior, there is a lot to take in consideration when we are talking about retirement. So it's not just I'll stop working, but there is a whole process going on. Can you help us understand the emotional part of it? For instance, you mentioned there is a sense of identity loss in that process. What goes through someone's mind when you have the sense of losing your identity?
Well, I think we can correlate the retirement process with a grieving process, because you need to pass through the grief of who you were, the type of job you had, who you were as a working person, and the identity you had related to that. And of course, also the role work itself had in your life up to this moment. So it is a grieving process of not only understanding that, but letting go of some things. And on the other way, also opening up towards a totally new, moment of your life. So emotionally, it can be really challenging, especially if you have never planned that or thought about that before. So as you said, you need to prepare financially for retirement, and I would say that emotionally as well. So it is really, really important that you can take, or that you have the space and mental space to think about it and plan accordingly, also emotionally. And a lot of emotions, and it's really difficult to pinpoint one emotion because a lot of emotions can come. You can have anxiety, you can have sadness, you can have happiness as well, because you will probably have more time to yourself than to the company, towards the job you had before. So it's also a very, I would say that for me, an emotion that is typically part of this moment is bittersweet, because there are a lot of difficult and challenging, and probably not really good emotions at the same time that you have a new perspective, a lot of good things happening. So it is a very bittersweet moment. And I'm not sure if I answered your question. Yeah, but I do think this is the combination of different things that can happen.
You definitely answer. You said it is bittersweet. I understand. In one of my programs for the retirement planning process, I talk about the first stage of retirement, which is excitement, and the other part is indeed grief. What I've seen from people that I've worked with is they go sometimes through a period of depression,
Yes,
which is
yes,
scary.
definitely. So there are some studies that definitely correlate the increase in number of depression and even anxiety in people that retired. But there are other studies that also correlate a less stress, for example, with retirement, because then you have more time for yourself, more time to travel and do things that you wish you would do for your during your life and you didn't have time before. So there are the two sides, and all the studies, they also correlate that uh, towards the planning. So if you plan regarding what will you do, what will your life look like, how will you be able to keep social connection without having an office to go to, how will you keep your life healthy and a healthy routine if you don't have to wake up every morning for a work responsibility. So it is also about planning your life accordingly and thinking about it, so you can keep this risk minimized in that sense.
Yes, which makes sense. Which makes
Yes,
sense. Because that is what I call also a misconception. The part of the freedom part usually only takes a year. That is for many people who are just who are still working. They think I still have a long time before thinking about my retirement, which is totally fine. That is normal. But when you get to your 50s, 50s, 55s, I think it's a good moment to start thinking about the emotional and social part of investing, I mean, the retiring, retirement,
yes, yeah.
because they usually think I will be free.
Yes, yes. And in one hand, you will be free from one part, but on the other hand, this is also depend. Of course, this depends on the person. But for some people, work and the type of work they do is really who they are, or they identify themselves with. Okay, I am my name is Marina, I am a psychologist, and this is who I am. Okay, but what other things do you have that is part of who you are? And depending on the person, they don't think about it. And let's take an example. I don't know, someone that works as a teacher for their whole life. And then probably they had to not only dedicate themselves, but also their lives towards studying, towards the school, towards the students, towards being a better teacher. And then from one day to another, and of course, we know this doesn't happen from one day to another, but if they don't prepare, this can be the case. They don't have this role anymore. And then who are they? What do they like to do? What gives them energy? And trying to find these other parts of your identity, it's a process. It also doesn't come from one day to another.
Very
Yeah,
scary moment as well. I
yes.
can imagine, I can only imagine, it's not the same thing, but I remember when I graduated from college.
Yeah.
And then someone told me, now you will have your whole life ahead of you to plan what you want to do. The whole life part was very scary because I had no clue what I was supposed to do after graduation.
Yeah, and I also think it's a moment that, as you said, you have more freedom, but you are also scared, and you need to have a lot of openness for what will happen. And not everyone has these, yeah, resiliency, but also openness towards the new. We often think we are open to the new, but this is not true because the new is very scary and you don't have control over it. So it's very, very scary as well, as I said.
And then you mentioned about the grieving part of it, that part. I mean, how long can that period takes?
This
What
really
is normal?
depends. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a great question. And as grief is really individual, also this process can be really individual. So I would say that if after, I don't know, I will just guess a number here, like 6 months, 1 year, you are still suffering a lot from that, it's definitely time to look for help or to look for, I don't know, someone, a psychologist that you can talk to and understand this process internally. But it's not that 6 months, 1 year is a cutting point, but it's also how much this is, these feelings are influencing in your daily life. Does
It's
it make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, of course, we both don't know exactly what would be normal. I've seen from my project that sometimes it can take over a year. After the what I call the honeymoon phase, which is
Yeah.
the first stage, and then there is the depression phase. And the depression phase, it is indeed very scary from what I've seen from people that I've worked with. And it all comes down to that conversation that we had before about our mental health to self-awareness.
Yes. Yes.
Because after that there is the happy phase. Now going to that, what kind of psychological preparation should we have?
I think you already answered that with your question. So when you said having more self-awareness and connection with yourself, this can definitely help. So if you understand better who you are outside of work, if you understand what is important for you, what matters to you, what do you want to do in this next period of your life, you connect with your values, you connect with what is important to you, then you have more chances to succeed. And when I say succeed, is having a better, smoother retirement period. So it's definitely connecting with yourself. And these, of course, you can do in different ways. And one of the ways is through a therapy process, for example, psychotherapy process. But this is one of the ways that you can do that and have yeah, more awareness.
I agree with you. I think it is major. That is something that we as people don't realize how important that is for our decision making process.
Definitely, definitely. And I would add to that, of course, there is the psychological part of it, the emotional part, but also the practical side of your life and your daily basis. So, we discussed before in our previous episode about, yeah, keeping a good routine of diet, sleep, exercise, and when you have such a major change in your routine, which is work, you can make a mess out of the rest as well. So I would say that this part is also really important for people to pay attention and to make sure that they keep a routine, and not necessarily a rigid routine, but a routine that has in it healthy, yeah, healthy activities, including diet, sleep, exercise, maybe having time for hobbies, having time for connection with people, which is also a big part that you will not necessarily miss, but have a change in it.
It is makes sense, but it is also not only important to keep your routine, to maintain the routine for the practical side, but also for your health.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely. And
yes,
also, of course, which is much more your part of it, but the financial part as well. So when you're retired, and if you didn't plan for that, you can get into difficult situations financially, which will have consequences in your health, in your routine, in everything else. So everything is interconnected, I would say, the financial, the social, the psychological part of it.
definitely. I mean, the part of the retirement planning, people tend to think that is money. How much will I have during my retirement? When can I retire?
Yeah,
And what I teach people is go back to who you are. From there, see how would you like to design your retirement. You need to think about those things so that you can attach an amount, and from that amount you can see how much have I saved so far, and how much will I need to cover the gap, and how can I cover this gap. Those are different steps in the retirement planning, which I love.
yes. Yes, yes, definitely. And of course, we are not saying that if you're retired, you just need to travel and do hobbies and that's it. Of course not. You can do different things in this retirement period. Maybe you want to do, I don't know, a volunteering work. Maybe you want to do a different type of work, but in a different way. So you can have more than one, more than two, more than 10 possibilities, but you need to think about it.
Yes.
Um, so you can plan, of course, accordingly to that.
Yes, indeed. And as you've mentioned, is doesn't mean that you can travel. In the retirement, in the financial part of the retirement planning, it's really important to know, would I like to travel in the first years of my retirement? That is important
Yes,
because that will decide how much money you will need. You will have more expenses the first year, and maybe the 2 years after, your expenses will decrease. Your
yes,
investment plannings, they need to go accordingly to your personal planning.
yes, definitely. And also, and then the connection with yourself and what is important for you also comes in place here because, okay, do everyone want to travel in their retirement? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe, I know you didn't have time to spend proper time with your grandchildren, and in the first 2 years, you want to be a full-time grandmother or grandfather, and you don't want to travel, and this is what you want to do. And, so also connecting with what is important for you. What do you want to do? It's really part of it. Or I don't know, maybe during your whole life you really wanted to do I don't know, a painting course or whatever type of course you wanted to do, or you wanted to study a different field. I always wanted to study, I know, philosophy in my life, but I never had time or money for that. And I would really like to do that in my retirement plan, not for work, but because I would like to do that, you
Yes,
know? So
yes,
also connecting and again, opening your mind towards what makes sense for you in that period of your life.
yes. So not being rigid, openness.
Yes,
It's key to plan ahead for your retirement.
yes,
It's very challenging for people to be open. It's very challenging. What you mentioned in the beginning, you have worked for sometimes over 20 years, over 15 years, performing the same role, the same routine. So yes, you develop an identity with that job, and
yes.
here we are saying openness.
Yeah, yeah. And also, Stella, if we think, you know, when you, for example, you change, if you work on the corporate road and you change jobs, you change from one company to another, there is that period that you need to disconnect emotionally from your previous company to go towards the new company. And when we talk about retirement, is the same thing, but in a different scale. So you need to disconnect not only from the company if you work for a company, but also from that period that sometimes is 20 years of your life that you worked in that specific role. So you need this phase of disconnecting, which can take time. And this usually needs to happen while you were still working, because then the transition is also a little bit smoother in that sense. So it's not okay, this day I'm 100% dedicated for this company, for this job, for this work. And then next day, I don't work anymore, I'm retired. Then now what? You know?
Yes, yes.
So this disconnection phase also needs to happen. And if you can make this happen while you were still working, this will help as well.
That is a very good point that you have just made about the disconnection part. And then you have I love that example. you
Yeah,
you mentioned if you are working, if you are coming from the corporate world, is it possible for organization to facilitate that process, the disconnection part of the employees?
definitely. It is possible. Companies could create programs around that. I don't think companies are really working on that right now, investing on this part. And I do think this is related to different things. And one of the things is, of course, money and how much you want to invest in this type of programs, because in the end, you will lose this person in the end. But of course, if we think of an employee life cycle and a whole cycle, a whole, sorry, the employee life cycle, and in the end, you also have this disconnection phase. But I don't think it's something easy to do.
Yes, I mean, you imagine the benefits from both sides if they would implement programs that facilitate the disconnection part, even for us, for entrepreneurs.
Yes, yes, definitely. And also, there are some companies already thinking about that and already working, for example, on succession plans. But this is not very common yet, especially in, yeah, small, mid-sized companies. We are not thinking about succession plans inside the corporate world. And this should be part also of the not only retirement, but also retirement.
Yes, it should.
Yeah, that's super cool. And also because, as we discussed before, there is this emotional connection from the employee towards the company, but also sometimes from the company with this employee which has been loyal towards this company for, I don't know, a long time, even though now people are staying less time on the same company than it was before. We still have those cases. So this emotional connection is not something you can break from. I mean, you can break, but it's quite harsh from one day to another. So if you have a plan, if you have a process, if you have a preparation for that, this is of course amazing.
I really liked your input on that matter, and I agree with you. I'm very practical person, and as entrepreneur, we never think about retiring. We don't
Yeah.
do that.
No.
But that applies also for us, our company, our baby. So there is a huge sense of identity there. The company is literally part of who that person is. So that is why that person is offering that service. So I have a hard time applying the same approach for me. What are the mistakes that pre-retirees like myself, like others, should avoid when preparing for the retirement?
Wow, that's a difficult question. And I think I could answer that in different perspectives. Uh, but the first thing that comes to my mind is that we should avoid thinking about ourselves just as working beings, and understanding that we are much more than just what we do for work. And sometimes we tend to, and I hear that a lot with my patients and clients, we tend to reduce ourselves to who we are at work. And I think this makes our lives more challenging when preparing for retirement. Because if you are thinking about letting go of this part of you and you identify yourself as just this, then it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
Especially if you, as you said, if you are an entrepreneur and you build your company around your own values, around what makes sense for you. So this also has a meaningful idea attached and philosophy attached towards that.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is. It is.
Yes, it is hard. If you would give a piece of advice for all of us, what would it be?
Connect with yourself and connect with your values and think about the retirement phase. So, and I do say that also for myself. I mean, when we are in a young age, we tend to not think about it, but this time will come one day. And of course, you should not be obsessed about it, but you should at least think a little bit about it. Um, and as we said before, we need to try to keep this open mind, which is not easy. And to be open, you also need to disattach from different things. And this means connect with yourself in the end.
Yes. Thank you, Marina, for your perspective. I'll take that in consideration. Oftentimes we start working on a later phase of our lives, over the 40s, over the 50s. But now there is she. She finally knows what she wants to do, what is her life's purpose. She's driven in starting our company based on our values, based on our philosophy. And then, yes, that person, how can someone like that start thinking about how would my retirement look like?
Yes, I think here we are adding on top of everything we discussed before, another factor, which is a social aspect of it, which is sometimes as women, we have sometimes you start working later, sometimes you have a period of your career that you stopped or that you had to slow down your career due to having kids, for example. And then here, yeah, the same principle I would say that also applies. So also trying to understand how in this retirement phase you can keep your connection with what makes you happy and what makes you move forward. So if it's your purpose to do something, I don't know, with people, when you work with people, but as a retired person, you won't do the same job. But what are other areas of your life that you can keep using that strength or keep using that same purpose, but not necessarily in a work way? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. What is left for me is, do I want to retire?
Yeah, I think this is the first question, of course.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Or another question that I also like to ask when I'm working with people, when we are talking about the sense of identity awareness, what are you retiring from?
It's a great question.
Well, thank you, Marina, again for your insights, for your input. Marina, I will repeat, where can people find you?
People can find me in my website, which is marinazart.com, or on Instagram, which is marinazart, my name and my surname, dot psychologist. And in both places, you can find me.
Yes, the Marina's contact details will be written below in the description. And please start your retirement planning. Just think about it. How would you do? How would your retirement look like? Who are you? Or who would you like to be during your retirement? Just fantasize. You have nothing to lose by just, you know, fantasize about it. And think about your health, your mental, physical, emotional health. Think about your finances. How much money will you need to be retired? How long do you expect to live? Of course, we all of us, we expect to live forever. But there is an indication, like if you retire when you are, let me say, 70, according to the statistics, maybe you are expecting to live until you are 90 or 95. I don't know. But just see, there is still 20 years, 25 years there range. So how much money will you need to cover your life expenses during that period? Or maybe you want to work part-time still, be retired. That is an option as well. But you need to think about those things. And if you need help with that, again, I can help you with that process. Marina can help you with that. Just ask for help if you just want to get started.
Definitely.
Well, I hope you found the conversation today worthwhile. Thank you all for listening. And remember, financial autonomy is a lifestyle and not a destination. I want, I can, I do, I am. Bye.